7:06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name's Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Temperatures throughout most of the region. You guys are in the 50s. Some of you worked your way into the 50s. So, okay, we have at some point school reopening across Wyoming. When that happens, there will be two definite reactions. The kids, yay, right. And then the parents, who of course will be screaming and cheering and throwing a party. It all depends on which side of the aisle you are on that one. So what's this going to look like? The federal government, on the one hand, has its rules. There's a few suggestions from the state, but it's in Wyoming up to the local school districts to make the ultimate decision. So to talk about what this looks like, our school superintendent for Wyoming, Jillian Balow, is on with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Glenn. How are you today?
Very good. Over-caffeinated, which is where I need to stay. But it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
So
I am too.
Let me ask you about the reaction from the kids on this. So you've got kids, right? How old are they at this point?
I do. Well, I have a 20-year-old who's serving in the U.S. Army.
Oh, good, okay.
So she's not too worried about it.
Right.
And I have an incoming ninth grader. So, yes,
okay.
We're in the thick of it at my house.
So I'm looking at the reaction of the ninth grader then. Is this, I can't wait to get back to school, or, oh, for the love of God, I got to go back to school?
He is counting the hours to get back to school.
Yeah.
And, and that's the general sentiment of kids this year. They've been home since mid-March.
Yeah.
And they're anxious to get back to school, to see friends, to see teachers, and to have some face-to-face interactions that they're used to, that are part of going back to school. Plus, going back to school on any year is exciting for kids of all ages.
Sure. So now when we take a look at what Wyoming schools are like, and Wyoming's very unique in some ways. I love driving, and I'm sure you know the school. Highway 50, south of Gillette, there's that little schoolhouse there with a couple of little apartments like duplexes for the parents and administrators and so on. So there's little schools like that. And then on the other hand, you can go to some place like Casper or Cheyenne and Gillette. We have some pretty big schools where the kids are pretty well packed in. So we have to really take a look at the diversity of Wyoming to decide what this is going to look like. That's why I figure it's up to the local school districts, isn't it?
Well, it is. And perhaps most importantly is that every single one of those local school districts is supported and represented by an elected school board. And so, as messy as education feels sometimes, as chaotic as governance feels, this is a really great time for decentralized and local control to make the very best decisions in terms of what should happen at 4J Little Powder outside of Gillette, that little teeny tiny school, or Casper. And it's going to look different. I anticipate that we'll have a lot of course corrections this school year as we adjust to sort of that new normal, which is a complete cliche now. Right. But, and that eventually schools and school districts will kind of gel around 5 or 6 different protocols and practices that make our school system better.
Okay, so local businesses across Wyoming, if they want to reopen, they're giving a business plan to their city council or wherever they might be in order to be able to open up. This is what they plan to do to help prevent the spread of COVID. Do school districts have to do that?
Yeah, well, if we can kind of think of a waterfall, up at the top we have President Trump, who has done a great job of focusing on K through 12 schools and the importance of going back to school. Then at the state level, we have, myself and the Department of Education, the legislature, the governor's office, the health officer, who is really has the key role in this, saying this is what needs to happen for schools to reopen safely. And so at the state level, we released on July 1st what's called the Smart Start Guidance. And it's really a framework that has a few requirements. Again, most of those are around health and safety and communication. And then a whole lot of recommendations and considerations for school districts. And so what we've asked school districts to do is to basically use that framework as a discussion guide with their teachers, their community, their school board, and come up with their own plan for how they'll deliver education, how they'll communicate that to the public, how they will implement new safety protocols and how they'll leverage technology this year.
Uh,
And so every school district right now is in the thick of either developing that, having it approved by our office, or implementing that. Across the state today, or excuse me, across the town of Cheyenne today, we have some schools that are opening for summer school, which is really a great beta test to, number one, kind of test the smart start at the local level, but number two, to really give kids that are most in need of academic help an extra boost before the school year starts. So it looks really different all over, but at the state level, what school districts have been able to count on is our support, number one, for their decisions, and number two, a few requirements and a lot of suggestions.
So with the bigger schools, when it comes to getting the kids to comply with, you got to wear your mask, no social distancing, quit hugging each other, things like that, this is going to be worse than herding cats.
Yeah, that's for sure. It will be. But I think with 6 months under our belts and sort of the cultural changes that we've gone through, as well as parents, really talking to kids about the pandemic, talking to them about new protocols, that, by and large, we'll see two things. We'll see, number one, schools setting some realistic expectations for kids of all ages that may look different from may look different in a high school classroom versus a kindergarten classroom. And we'll see students, just like they always do, doing their very best. But we need to recognize that social-emotional learning, physical touch, communication, face-to-face interaction, those are really, really important steps in the growth of a child. And so the question is, how do you find that balance? And we have some great teachers out there. We have some great, great parents out there who are really working with kids to teach that right now, and that'll be even more so once school starts.
Do you worry that since kids have been away for such a long time, there's going to have to be a little bit of catch-up to get them back to where they should be?
Yes, I do. What we saw last year was there were some kids who did really, really well in an alternative learning environment, that is remote learning virtually or by learning packets. And we had some kids that didn't do so well, didn't respond so well to that style of learning. And then we had some kids that were really, really hard to reach. Their families had maybe health issues or, weren't supportive of the process to go to a remote learning style. And those are the kids that kept us all awake at night, right? We had sort of this twin crisis emerge, if you will, in the midst of the pandemic. All of a sudden, we saw reports of maltreatment in kids go way, way down, and that's not a good thing. That's because teachers, law enforcement, and social workers are the people who usually report those cases to authorities and intervene. And so as that reporting was going down and kids were at home, we could very well be dealing not only with an academic gap, but also with some pretty severe trauma that kids are coming back to school with, either as a result of maltreatment, a result of isolation, maybe a result of having extra responsibility or the majority of responsibility in a home when they had probably should have been doing other things.
Right. Well, real quick, while I still got you, I want to go back to the whole idea of, again, social distancing, wearing masks, stuff like that. What does the school bus ride look like, and what does the cafeteria look like? Because that's a couple of times when you cram people in.
Yeah. So, again, it's going to look different from age group to age group, district to district, maybe even activity to activity. But the requirements right now are for students to social distance on a bus. There are some exceptions. For example, if there are siblings that are riding the bus together, And if social distancing isn't possible, students need to wear masks.
Okay.
So what that'll look like, in say Laramie County versus a rural district is a little bit different. And, we may see increased number of bus routes. We may see a little more spacing in between when one bus goes out and when it goes out again, because there needs to be extra cleaning that takes place. Cafeterias may look different as well. We may see students that eat in their classrooms, or a more staggered lunch schedule in schools. And again, requirements from the state are few. Social distancing is a requirement, and when social distancing isn't possible, the use of face coverings such as masks or face shields is required. But that could look different from school to school and district to district. So we're leaving those decisions up to communities, up to principals and teachers to sort through, and it's no easy task. For sure, it may even look different from one school to the next within a school district.
All right, Superintendent Jillian Balow, thanks for coming on the program this morning. I know we're going to talk more as this develops, and I'm sure I'd love to have you back as soon as the House and Senate meets and goes over that budget again, because that might affect you too. So we'll have to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, that absolutely will affect us, Glenn, and thank you for I'm going to take that as an invitation, because what we didn't get to today too much is sort of what teaching and learning looks like this year, what the budget discussion is going to shape up to look like, and what's happening with online school. What does that look like for students? What choices do parents have? So we have a lot to cover that I know I'm hearing about every day.
Well, you always have an open invitation to come on this program anytime you think something needs to be discussed.
Well, likewise, you have an open invitation to invite me.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Gwen. Take care.
7:18. Wake Up Wyoming.